Hello, welcome to the Black Ponder. I'm Neil Trotter. Now, I'm pretty sure I mentioned before, although I don't remember the specific video where I mentioned it, but I'm pretty sure I mentioned one time that I like reading comic books. I like reading comic books a lot, actually. I'm an avid comic book reader, and from time to time I'll also come across the interesting graphic novel. Now, what is a graphic novel? You probably already know the answer to that question, but in case you don't know, a graphic novel is pretty much a mix between a comic book and a novel. Right? Like a comic book, its storyline, its narrative is told primarily through illustration. But like a novel, the story, the narrative is more drawn out. It's not as compartmentalized or episodic as a comic book. I came across this graphic novel, The Spectators, by Victor Hussenot. Hopefully I'm pronouncing the guy's last name correctly. And not only does it have some pretty amazing illustrations in it, it's also a book about existentialism. And that's right up my alley. I've checked out a few reviews of this book, and they all basically say that the book is an examination of how human beings are ultimately reflections of each other and their constructs. So when you look around, when you spectate in the world, and when you look at other people, not only do you see other people, you see yourself. And when you look at humanity's creation, civilization, cityscapes, technology, when you see all that, you're ultimately looking at yourself. And I would definitely agree, that's definitely a message in the book. At least that's how I interpret it. Maybe, who knows, it might not be, but that's how I interpret it. But I would like to also add some of my own interpretation, something I got out of it. I think the book also delves heavily in the concept of the ego. Now, the ego is a very old concept in philosophy. It's heavy in ancient Eastern philosophy, and is also heavy in ancient Greek philosophy. It's been around for a long time, right? And I think The Spectators examines this concept. Let me show you with some illustrations. Now, my low budget HD camcorder that I got on sale in the year 2012 is probably not gonna do the illustrations justice. I'm gonna show it to you anyway, just to show you what I'm talking about. Throughout the graphic novel, these kinds of images are interspersed. It's like this shadowy figure, which I feel is the true self. That's what I think this shadowy figure represents. It could represent something else, or it could represent multiple things, but that's how I see it. That's the true self, and the true self is deciding, which persona, which ego, which representation do I want to show the world today? So like clothes, we adopt an ego, a representation of what we want people to see, and we wear it like clothes. Right? But notice that underneath is the shadowy figure, the true self. Let me show you another illustration. Check it out. Oh, I can't even see. Oh, okay, well, here we go. So people do this all the time, right? They're in one persona, one ego, and then they switch just as simply as maybe the next day they'll become somebody else. You'll look at somebody and you'll be like, wow, this person is completely different. They change their image of who they are. We oftentimes do this as a whim. Although we change our egos, the true self remains the same. Here's another one of those illustrations, right? When we come home at night, or whenever we're ready to go to sleep, we're our true selves. When we come home, we take off our personas. That could be like our makeup, our lotion, moisturizers, our cool clothes that we wear, all the things that we want to show the world who we really are. We take all that off and we unwind, and we are our true selves in the bed, right? But when we get up in the morning for the next day, we got to put on our ego again. We got to show our representation. We don't want people to see who we really are. We want people to see the best version of ourselves, or what we think the best versions of ourselves is. Now notice that our true selves is a shadow illustrated in this book. I think that means something. This shadowy figure I think it means like our true selves are unknown to us. They're undefinable. We really can't put a finger on who we really are, but we desperately try to define ourselves, even though that's not really possible. In this desperation, in this attempt of us trying to define ourselves, define the undefinable, this creates angst. This is what the whole philosophical branch of existentialism is addressing, this issue of how there are things about existence that we can't define. We desperately want to define them, yet we can't. And so it creates this angst that we experience. Let me show you another illustration that demonstrates this. So it's two guys talking, and the one guy is like, what makes you happy? And the other guy's like, sometimes I just walk in the city just looking for stuff. Right? I like doing that too. I like walking in the city. And the guy says he's walking in the city and he's trying to look for something, right? And he wonders what's behind that building. And he makes up these options in his head. Like, I bet behind that building or across the street where I can't find, once I get across the street, maybe is a beguiling back street full of charm. Or maybe it's a wide avenue, cold and austere. Or it could be a banal street like so many others. It could be any one of those things. But ultimately, my one desire is to discover it. We're desperately trying to define what we don't see, what we don't know. We're trying to define it, but oftentimes we can't, even when we get there. So this whole illustration right here, the guy gets there and he says to himself, does this place I'm searching for in this maze of a city really exist? We're desperately trying to search for something, even though that something may not even exist. And that gives us angst. That leads to things like existential crises and things of that nature. Here's another illustration of a lady who finds a coin and he starts talking to his friend. She's like, look, I found a coin. I bet this coin has been all over the place. And the friend is like, well, how do you know that? You don't know that. The coin, you could be the first person that coin has been with. And she's like, no, I know. I know this coin's been all over the place, right? And this is nice illustration, this nice watercolor, what it seems to me, of just pretending like, look, this coin has been in Scotland, it's been to France, it's been to Italy. I mean, it's been all over the place. It's been all over. In vain, I tried to make sense of the reappearance of this coin. And she's trying to work it out in her head, but it's just not happening. She knows that it's nothing special. So she just puts it back in her purse. And we do that all the time. We think something special. We're like, oh, this thing that happened to me, this object that I have, this relationship that I am, oh, this must be the special one. This is it. This means something. This has a lot of meaning in it. And it could very well mean something. But that meaning, you might not be able to understand or interpret. So you try and force your own definition onto that thing. And the fact that doesn't work out because what you're trying to define is you just can't really define it, that creates angst. You're saying to yourself, damn, maybe it doesn't really mean anything. Maybe it's not special. There's nothing really special about that thing or about me. Check out this illustration. So this true self has switched personas all over the place. He's adopted all these egos or different kinds of personas to project out an image of what he feels the world should see him or her as. This true self has collected all these personas, all these egos. And the true self has done this through spectating. The intelligence of man continues to grow as the knowledge of each individual increases. Through this process of our true selves spectating each other and trying to develop these egos, we also in turn develop the collective knowledge of humanity. And that's where our constructs come from, the things that we create, our civilization. And this collective knowledge gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? However, no matter how big it gets, and it's pretty big, humanity's collective knowledge, it pales into comparison to all the things that we don't know. All of that collective knowledge from humanity, no matter how big it is, just keeps getting thinner and thinner as we ultimately realize how much we still don't know. In fact, it becomes nothing. And that creates angst. That creates a lot of issues that are addressed in existentialism. Hamlet holding that skull and shouting in angst, depression, to be or not to be, that is the question, right? Because he's so frustrated, disturbed, that he still doesn't know so much. So do we give up despite the fact that we still know so little about existence? Nope. We just keep searching. That collective knowledge is still trying to find meaning. It's still trying to define the undefinable. Henceforth, this existential struggle continues, right? Because we don't give up. No, we can do this. We can define the undefinable. So on that journey to do that, we have to go through these struggles that are explained in existentialism. That's just my interpretation, right? You might not share it. You might have gotten something different out of it. And that's fine. It's very open-ended, I think. And the illustrations leave a lot open to interpretation. They're very beautiful illustrations. Nice watercolors and great use of shadows and shading to tell the story, the narrative. I just gave you a teaser, right? Those are just, what I showed you was just a fraction of all the images that are in this book. It's a lot of images and a lot of ideas that are thrown out. So I encourage you to check it out if you're into comic books and philosophy. Even though it's got a lot of complex philosophical ideas in this, it's presented in a way that's accessible. So a layman could get into the world of graphic novels and comic books, as well as the world of philosophy, or specifically existentialism. In any case, you've been watching The Black Ponder. I'm Neil Trotter. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.